Have you ever wondered how some businesses seem to know exactly what you want, maybe even before you do? Well, that's the power of business analytics. It's really the art of turning raw data into smarter, faster decisions. And in this explainer, we're going to show you exactly how it all works. I mean, it's a huge question, right? How do companies see market shifts coming or, stop problems before they even start? The answer isn't some kind of magic. It's a really systematic process of turning scattered information into a powerful engine for strategy. Exactly. And for business analytics, high-quality data is the fuel. It's the engine that turns all those raw numbers into a real strategic advantage. It lets organizations move from just reacting to what's already happened to actively shaping what happens next. And this whole journey from the past to the future can actually be broken down into three pretty simple stages. We start with hindsight, that's just understanding what happened. Then we find insight, which is figuring out why it happened. And finally, we get to foresight, predicting what's coming and deciding what to do about it. So think of this as our roadmap. Okay, so our journey starts right at the beginning, hindsight. Before you can even think about shaping the future, you have to get a really crystal clear picture of the past. So let's take a look at how that's done. The main tool for hindsight is something called descriptive analytics. It's the most straightforward kind of analysis, really. All it does is summarize historical data to give you a clear view of what's already occurred. You can think of it like the rear-view mirror for your business. Let's imagine for a second that we run a restaurant. Descriptive analytics would be the thing that hands us a report saying, hey, your customer satisfaction scores dropped by 15% last quarter. Now, that's a super important piece of information, but it only tells us what happened, not why. So we know the what, but the million-dollar question is always why. And this brings us to our second stage, insight. This is where the real power of analytics starts to show itself. Think of it this way. Descriptive analytics gives you the facts, plain and simple. But diagnostic analytics, well, it plays detective. It's designed specifically to dig into that data to find the root causes and the hidden relationships behind the numbers. So, if we look back at our roadmap, we're now in the insight phase. We're moving beyond just looking at the past. We're starting to really understand it, searching for the reasons and the patterns that led to those results in the first place. And for our restaurant, this is the big aha moment. The diagnostic work reveals that the 15% drop in satisfaction lines up perfectly with a big spike in customer wait times, specifically on Friday and Saturday nights. Aha! We found a potential culprit. Now, it's really tempting to just jump straight into predicting the future. But hold on. Before we can do any of that, we have to talk about the single most important foundation for all of analytics. Because if we get this part wrong, everything, and I mean everything that we build on top of it, will just collapse. You've probably heard this phrase before, right? Well, in analytics, it is the golden rule. Your analysis, no matter how fancy or sophisticated it is, can only be as good as the data you feed it. Faulty data leads to faulty conclusions, period. The thing is, real-world data is messy. You're always going to find missing information, duplicate records, weirdly formatted entries, and just plain old errors. The process of cleaning all that up, standardizing it, and structuring it, that's called pre-processing, and it's an absolutely critical step before you can even think about doing any analysis. Okay, so our data is clean, we've figured out the what and the why, now it's time to ask the most powerful question of all. What's next? This is foresight. Looking at our roadmap for the last time, this is where we basically turn history into a crystal ball. Foresight uses two really powerful techniques, predictive and prescriptive analytics, to not just see the future, but to actually help shape it. And it follows a really simple logical flow. First, predictive models use all that historical data to forecast what's probably going to happen. Then, prescriptive analytics takes that forecast and recommends the best thing to do to get the result you want. So, how do we make these predictions? Well, we use sophisticated models. This, for example, is a simplified picture of a neural network. You can kind of think of it as a system that's inspired by the human brain, and it's incredibly good at finding those really complex, hidden patterns in huge amounts of data. Another really powerful technique is clustering. What this type of model does is automatically group similar data points together. It's so useful for things like market research, because it lets a business find distinct groups of customers who have their own unique behaviors and preferences. So let's bring it all back to our restaurant. The predictive model forecasts that if nothing changes, satisfaction is going to drop another 20% next quarter. Ouch. But prescriptive analytics doesn't just deliver bad news, it offers a solution. It recommends automatically offering a free appetizer to any table that has to wait more than 15 minutes. See that? Data has just driven a decision. So that's the full journey, from past to future. But how do organizations actually make this happen in the real world? Well, it takes a lot more than just some clever algorithms. Success in analytics really rests on three equally important pillars. You need the right people with the right skills, you need a clear process for how to use the insights, and of course, you need the right technology to power the whole thing. A weakness in any one of these can bring the entire effort down.
So, what are the key things to take away from all this? First, always start with what the business needs, not just with the cool tech. Second, you have to constantly measure and prove the value of your insights. Third, make sure your technology is flexible enough to change and adapt. And finally, and this one is so important, be prepared to manage the cultural shift. Because becoming a data-driven organization, it changes everything.
And let's just end by hammering home our most important point. As Lisa Schwartz says here, even the most advanced AI is pretty much useless without good data. Quality is everything.
You know, every click, every sale, every customer review, it's all a piece of a larger story that your data is trying to tell you. Business analytics gives you the power to finally hear that story and maybe